glad. I was proud. I don't know about proud, but I'm glad. I don't, if I think back on it, I don't think there was any choice.
Really?
No. But I think it was a life-saving choice, if you want to know the truth.
Why no choice?
For over half a century, Robert Redford has been lauded as the archetype of the perfect gentleman, composed, sophisticated, and always maintaining a distance. But beneath that tranquil exterior lies a life full of mysteries, where private corners have been concealed more meticulously than any role he ever played. The photos below are the rare pieces that peel back that glamorous veneer, revealing a Redford drastically different from the public persona. From his role as a billionaire in the film, criticized for treating women like a commodity, the suspicion of silent disappearing, and his abrasive attitude toward the entire film crew, to an unexpectedly intimate moment with a male co-star that led the public to believe they were a gay couple. What is the story behind these images? Watch until the end of the video, because the final secret will shock you. 1. The role of billionaire Gage in Indecent Proposal. 1993, the biggest debate of the 90s. In 1993, when Indecent Proposal was released, Hollywood erupted. On screen, Robert Redford transformed into John Gage, a charming billionaire who makes an offer that stunned millions of viewers, paying $1 million to test a married couple's love. The film quickly became a phenomenon, not just for its bold romance, but because it touched upon the delicate boundary between fidelity and the power of money. What few knew was that Redford initially refused the role. According to director Adrian Lyne, Redford was concerned that the audience would misunderstand him if he embodied a character whose motive was to buy affection. In many meetings, he repeatedly requested script edits to ensure Gage would not become a complete villain. Redford once said, "I didn't want the character to just be a person with money and power. I wanted to pose the question, if money can buy everything, what meaning does love still hold?" However, when the film was released, his fear materialized. Many newspapers called it the biggest moral debate of the 90s. Some social organizations and viewers criticized the film for its sensitive subject matter. One critic even remarked, "Redford was once an icon of integrity, now he chooses a role that represents temptation." Behind the scenes, there were rumors that Redford had suggested cutting an intimate scene because he felt it made the character lack depth. This decision displeased the director, who believed Redford was trying to protect his personal image instead of fully serving the story. Nevertheless, Indecent Proposal still grossed over $260 million globally. Redford, despite the controversy, proved his colossal appeal. And for many, that role was not just a turning point, but a moment when Robert Redford dared to step outside the perfect hero persona. It's said that after one take, he and the director had a tense exchange lasting several minutes, purely over the expression of emotion between the two characters. And it was that moment that opened the floodgates for the most severe criticisms in Redford's career. 2. Jane Fonda's comments on Robert Redford. He has a problem with women. In a 2017 interview, Jane Fonda surprisingly revealed Robert has a problem with women. He doesn't like kissing scenes. This seemingly lighthearted remark opened up a host of questions. Was it merely shyness or an expression of Redford's discomfort with women on set? Fonda recounted, "For years, Redford always tried to keep his distance as far as possible. He often asked the director to shorten or change intimate scenes, citing them as unnecessary. However, to Fonda, who always projected a strong image, that action felt like a denial and hurt her. I used to think he didn't like me, but gradually I understood that it was his way of hiding discomfort," she said. Many crew members confirmed that Redford was very strange. He avoided all physical contact, even avoiding dual photo shoots. One backstage staff member recalled, "He was polite to the point of being weird. It was as if there was a 5-meter gap between him and women." The irony is that this distance only amplified Redford's appeal. Directors realized that the audience was mesmerized by the repressed emotion, a love that never ignited but merely simmered, making them want to look deeper into the character. Nevertheless, Jane Fonda's comment left an indelible mark. It was not just an offhand remark, but a glimpse into the flip side of the man once considered the global epitome of perfection, very refined with women but unable to get close to them. But if Jane Fonda only saw a distance with women on screen, the backstage environment revealed another distance colder, more ruthless between Redford and his own colleagues. But 3. The suspicions of ghosting and his attitude towards the entire film crew. Few know that Robert Redford was once linked to a nickname, the Ghoster of Hollywood. A post circulated on Reddit in 2022 from someone claiming to be a former production assistant wrote, "Redford could make you believe you were the most important person on the project until the film wrapped. Then he vanishes. No email, no calls, no thank you. He ghosts the entire crew." The story quickly spread, confirmed by many anonymous industry insiders. A young director who participated in a Sundance Institute project recounted, "He was too safe. When the project was no longer within his control, Redford immediately withdrew." Even some actors who collaborated with him revealed that Redford did not keep in touch after the film ended. The media began to dig deeper. Was this an expression of arrogance, or just Redford's way of protecting himself from emotional attachments after decades in the business? One writer commented, "Redford isn't cruel. He's just exhausted by Hollywood's superficial relationships." But not everyone was sympathetic. Another editorial sharply criticized, "He is a man who preaches ethics, yet he cannot maintain basic relationships with the people who helped him shine." And so, in the public eye, Redford, the founder of Sundance, the inspiration for generations of independent artists, suddenly became a symbol of coldness after the spotlight. Yet, over his decades of being labeled cold, only one man ever made Redford break that rule. And when intimate photos of them were released, Hollywood was scandalized. 4. Intimate photos of Robert Redford and Paul Newman. Affection beyond the line. Few duos have captivated audiences like Robert Redford and Paul Newman. But it was from this pairing that a persistent rumor began to spread across Hollywood. Could there be an affection between them that transcended friendship? Some crew members recounted that Redford and Newman were very much like two men in love. They often hung out alone, slept in the same room, and even put chickens in each other's rooms to play pranks. Once, while director George Roy Hill was filming The Sting, he joked, "If I leave them in the same room for another 5 minutes, they'll make their own movie." The public at the time, accustomed to a classic masculine image, found their unusual bond highly conversational. A tabloid even ran a headline, "Redford and Newman Friendship or Something More." Significantly, Redford never denied it. He merely smiled when asked and said a line that fueled further curiosity, "I love Paul more than anyone I've ever met." In the context of 1970s Hollywood, which was still cautious about gender topics, that statement was like adding fuel to the fire. Some critics suggested that Redford and Newman created the first bromance archetype in cinema, loyal, passionate, but full of unspoken meaning. When Paul Newman passed away in 2008, Redford wrote in his eulogy, "When Paul left, I felt like I lost a part of myself." No one knows exactly what their relationship truly was, friends, soulmates, or a bond that went beyond words. But one thing is certain, there was a mysterious thread between Redford and Newman that all of Hollywood felt, but no one dared to name. Ironically, the man whom the world admired for his composure and kindness was once nabbed by the police in the streets of New York during a drunken, rebellious night that he later called his first darkness. 5. Once taken to the police station in the late 1940s. Before becoming an icon of elegance, Robert Redford had a rebellious past. In the late 1940s, as a teenager living in the working-class neighborhood of Santa Monica, Redford often skipped school and was drawn into going too far. One day, he was taken to the police station for questioning after they found a bracelet and some pieces of jewelry on him. According to records cited by Factinet and some local documents, Redford asserted that he did not take the items directly. A close friend had asked him to hold on to it without him knowing what was inside. When the police appeared, Redford became the one held responsible. "I was too young to understand that it was a prank," he admitted years later. Fortunately for Redford, the evidence was insufficient. His family, who lived in difficult circumstances, had to seek help from acquaintances. The case was closed, but the story still got the young blonde man expelled from school and led to a downward spiral. He began drinking, dropped out, and then wandered across Europe, a time he later referred to as the years I spent finding myself. Interestingly, that stumble defined who Robert Redford became. He once said in an interview with Esquire, "I understand what it's like to lose everything. That very feeling is why I never judge anyone, especially those who have lost their way." No one would have guessed that the teenager the police questioned in the streets of Santa Monica that year would later become the person who dared to drag the entire American government into the light. 6. The film All the President's Men considered the opener of Political Secrets. In 1976, while America was still reeling from the Watergate scandal, Robert Redford appeared on screen not as a romantic hero, but as the one who unraveled one of the most shocking political stories of the century. The film All the President's Men was a powerful statement about the right to know the truth. Few knew that Redford himself had discovered its potential even before the public grasped the magnitude. After reading the investigative series by two young journalists, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, in the Washington Post, Redford contacted them, bought the book rights, and said, "The government cannot hide this." When the project was announced, Redford immediately faced a wave of backlash. Some in conservative circles felt he was using cinema to attack, while some colleagues scoffed that Redford wanted to be a moral hero. Anonymous letters were even sent to his home, accusing him of being a traitor to the American spirit. The film's production was not easy either. Warner Brothers was initially hesitant, concerned that the political subject matter would deter audiences. Redford had to self-fund, personally convince Dustin Hoffman to join and control every detail of the script to ensure absolute accuracy. He even insisted on recreating the original newsroom of the Washington Post in the film down to every piece of paper on the reporters' desks. When the film was released, All the President's Men not only won 4 Academy Awards, but also earned Redford the title of the man who brought truth to the screen. But that title came at a high cost. He was labeled a political artist, and some major directors refused to collaborate because they felt he brought too many ideals into the film. Redford later shared, "I didn't make All the President's Men to go against anyone. I did it because I believe in the truth." From that moment on, Redford was no longer a mere movie star. He became America's most daring storyteller, the one who dared to turn cinema into a tool for illumination and to turn the belief in justice into something that forced the entire system to self-reflect. 7. Behind the scenes. Redford was a difficult man who made the crew sweat. Unlike his perfect on-screen image in real life, Redford was a difficult old grouch. Many who worked with him called Redford a perfectionist to the point of being suffocating. When Redford began to serve as both actor and producer, he started controlling everything. From the lighting, framing, camera angles, to his co-star's dialogue pace, everything had to meet the Redford standard. A director who collaborated on The Natural 1984 recounted, "He didn't yell, but I panicked every time he looked at me. When Redford said, 'Do it again,' no one dared to ask why." Some technicians recalled that he often requested a scene to be reshot simply because. The color of the sunset wasn't exactly as he'd imagined. On some days, the crew had to wait an extra 4 hours just for the light to be golden enough. It sounds like perfectionism, but for the crew, it was a nightmare. A former cinematographer once said, Redford could make you reshoot a simple handshake scene 20 times just because he felt it wasn't real enough. When he was silent, you knew you had to do it again. Many colleagues described him as both charming and terrifying. Actress Faye Dunaway once hinted that Redford was too closed off for long-term collaboration. Meanwhile, Paul Newman, his closest co-star, said a cryptic line, "Bob is a good friend, but I wouldn't want him to direct my life." That control, according to many, stemmed from Redford's obsession with image. He believed that only absolute perfection would make a film live forever. But for the crew, that meant exhausting shooting days, extended schedules, and tension so thick, the film set atmosphere was suffocating. This obsession with absolute perfection didn't stop on the film set. Stepping out into the real world, Redford carried it with him, this time targeting the US government. 8. Criticizing the government and trying to take the moral high ground. In 2001, shortly after President George W. Bush took office, Redford, now in his 60s, surprisingly appeared in an article with a direct tone. He said, "The administration is ignoring nature. They act as if we live separate from this planet." The statement immediately caused a stir in Washington. Some conservative figures felt he was trying to take the moral high ground, while supporters praised Redford as a man who dared to speak what many were hesitant to say. Redford did not back down. He continued to appear on major TV channels like CNN and ABC, urging the government to focus more on environmental issues and balance economic interests. Many colleagues in Hollywood advised him to remain silent, but Redford did the opposite. He withdrew from several commercial projects, investing all his personal money into the Sundance Preserve, a nature conservation area in Utah. He even declined an invitation to the White House, simply saying, "I don't come to pose, I come to act." A few years later, some of his conservation programs faced difficulties due to funding cuts. Some critics also pointed out the paradox that Redford still traveled by private jet while advocating for climate protection. Despite the arguments, Redford held his ground. In a speech he shared, "I've been called many names, a dreamer, a stubborn person, even a lost actor. But if believing in the right thing makes me misunderstood, then I'm willing to be misunderstood forever." He once dared to challenge the entire system to protect the environment, but then caused Hollywood to argue over another reason, and it all began at a place called the Sundance Institute. 9. Causing debate with the founding of Sundance Institute. only selecting films that could sell. When Robert Redford founded the Sundance Institute in 1981, he was hailed as the person who opened a new era for American independent cinema. But few knew that this very place would later become a subject of simmering debate within the filmmaking community for decades. At the time, Hollywood was dominated by a wave of commercial blockbusters like Star Wars' Jaws, Rocky. Small, independent films barely had a chance. Redford, with an artist's vision and a desire to make a difference, announced he would build a sanctuary for young filmmakers. And so, the Sundance Institute was born, a symbol of creative spirit and freedom. However, over time, this very symbol of independence was accused of gradually following the trajectory of the system Redford once wanted to counterbalance. A young filmmaker once shared, "My work didn't fit Sundance's direction, but isn't that what Hollywood usually says too?" Some critics also remarked that Sundance had become more professionalized, focusing on projects that were both artistic and commercially viable. Many young directors who once saw Redford as a pioneer felt regret as they saw the festival increasingly linked to major distributors, corporate sponsors, and meticulously standardized publicity campaigns. Even some insiders admitted that Redford was extremely cautious in selecting films and often prioritized projects with commercial potential. A female director who attended once shared, "Bob is kind, but he doesn't want to take risks. Sundance is now a place for those who know how to innovate within limits." In a 2016 interview, Redford merely smiled when asked about this. "I have no regrets. If you open the door to all voices, you must also accept all feedback." However, what drew the most public attention was not Redford's safe film choices, but his reaction to the major shift in Hollywood, a time when the industry was confronting demands for equality and transparency. 10. Reaction to women's movements. He should have done more than just speak. In 2018, as Hollywood was shaken by the feminist wave, numerous powerful names were exposed, and the film world was forced to face its dark side. Amidst the storm, Robert Redford surprisingly broke his silence. During a press conference at the Sundance Film Festival, Redford spoke slowly. "This is the time for men to be quiet and listen. Let women tell their stories." That quote was cited in every newspaper. The Guardian hailed Redford as a rare man in Hollywood. But just a few days later, a wave of backlash erupted. Some insiders felt that Redford was straddling the line between action and observation, and that he, as the founder of Sundance, should have demonstrated more than just words. A commentary in The Hollywood Reporter wrote, "Redford is right, but he needs to go further. Listening is the start, but action is what makes a difference." Within Sundance, discussions were intense. Some young staff members asserted that Redford genuinely wanted to innovate. He requested the establishment of programs specifically for female directors and opened a script support fund for independent filmmakers. But others felt he was too cautious, fearing that every decision would be interpreted politically. A female director who attended Sundance in 2019 shared anonymously, "Redford has a sincere heart, but he still has the mindset of the previous generation, believing that listening is enough. He doesn't realize that sometimes silence also carries many messages." When asked again later, Redford simply replied, "I don't want to turn others' pain into a topic for debate. I just want to believe that if we truly listen, the world will be better." But perhaps what touched the public most did not come from the comments, but from the moment people realized the former icon of Hollywood had now chosen to live a quieter life. A photograph of Redford at a resort left the world stunned. 11. Photo at a resort, overly casual dress and loss of legendary charisma. Previously, a candid photo of Redford was posted on social media with the caption, "The man who once charmed all of Hollywood now looks like an out-of-time tourist." The photo showed Redford in a crumpled shirt, faded fabric pants, messy hair, sitting with his legs crossed on the beach. Within hours, it went viral across film forums. Some comments expressed shock. "Is this Redford unbelievable?" Meanwhile, others defended him, saying, "That's the real Redford, a man who no longer needs to prove anything." According to an article in Vanity Fair, that moment occurred during the period when Redford had temporarily withdrawn from cinema after completing the project The Old Man and the Gun, 2018. He chose to live reclusively away from Hollywood and refused most interviews. But the media did not let up. They described his appearance with harsh phrases: unkempt, tired, looks like a man who has given up everything. In reality, Redford did not intentionally ruin his image. A close friend recounted, "Bob never cared about clothes. He just wanted to sit and drink coffee." Yet the photo sparked fierce public debate. One side argued that Redford had lost his legendary charisma, while the other believed he was merely demonstrating his liberation, no longer constrained by others' expectations. Someone wrote on Twitter, "Let Redford age. Actors are normal people too. Don't let that casual appearance deceive you, because inside the man who seems to have shed everything, there remains an unrelenting flame of obsession." 12. Considered too stubborn about Native American film projects. In the late 1980s, Redford sought out writer Tony Hillerman, famous for his detective novels set in the Navajo Nation. His goal was clear: to bring the indigenous community to the screen in central roles instead of just fleeting appearances in westerns. However, when Redford presented the project to major studios, he was consistently rejected. One production executive once said, "Films about Native Americans are difficult to attract a mainstream audience." That statement made Redford pause for a few seconds. He understood that the Hollywood system he once trusted was not truly ready for that change. Despite this, Redford did not give up. He self-funded the project's development, cast Navajo actors, and even took the crew to New Mexico for test filming. But each time a distribution deal was close, investors withdrew, citing a lack of market factor. In the end, the film was indefinitely paused. This story was only revealed years later when a former crew member shared that Redford once said, "If people aren't ready to listen to the native voice, then I will help them be heard." It was from this that Redford shifted direction. He established the Sundance Institute and created a dedicated film category for indigenous artists. However, the Tony Hillerman project remains something that weighed on him. Some insiders felt he was too stubborn. But for Redford, it wasn't stubbornness, it was the persistent effort of an artist who wanted to change the perspective of the entire industry. Perhaps that's why years later, when people saw Redford riding a horse alone in the Utah mountains, everyone thought he was enjoying a peaceful old age. But few knew that behind that moment was a man who still held an unextinguished aspiration. 13. Behind the photo of Redford. Riding a horse in the Utah mountains. Behind the photos of Redford riding a horse on the Utah mountainside, a place he called the Land of Freedom, lies a story steeped in nostalgia and destiny. Around the mid-1970s, having become a global star after The Sting and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Redford abruptly withdrew from Hollywood for a period. He bought nearly 2,000 acres in the Wasatch Range, Utah, the area that would later become the legendary Sundance Resort. For years, Redford lived there like a hermit, personally building fences, tending to his herd of horses, and often riding up to the mountain peak every morning, regardless of rain, snow, or intense sun. In fact, those rides were not just a hobby. They were Redford's way of combating depression, a disease that began to haunt him after the death of his firstborn son. A crew member recalled that every morning Redford would silently leave the set ride his horse alone up the hillside and return with red eyes. What the audience didn't know was, it was during that time that Redford conceived the idea for the Sundance Institute, the largest center for independent cinema in America. He said in an interview, "I saw the snow melting the horses running, and I thought if I can create a place where artists are as free as this cinema might also be saved." The photo of Redford riding a horse in the Utah mountains is not just a beautiful image of a star. It is a symbol of a man finding himself again in nature. Hollywood was full of lies, but on horseback, amidst the thin air and the howling wind of Utah, Redford was finally able to live truthfully, even if only for a few hours a day. Hollywood, which people call the Kingdom of Dreams, is actually a giant factory specializing in manufacturing illusions. Their fame is the fuel, money is the glue, and loneliness is the never-ending background music. Every tear on screen has been directed, every smile timed to the right angle of light, and even sincerity has to go through censorship. The stage lights are not there to illuminate people, they are only there to hide what people don't want anyone to see. Binding contracts, gilded lies, and souls being consumed daily under the camera flash. In that world, people do not live, they are edited. The studio builds the image, advertisers paint the emotion, and the PR department defines even love. Every handhold is a media strategy. Every divorce is a PR opportunity, and tears timed correctly become an iconic cinematic moment. As for real emotions, if they aren't profitable, they are cut from the script. Behind the red velvet and grand premieres is a graveyard of once dreaming souls. Hollywood doesn't need guns to destroy anyone. It just needs applause and adulation, the things that make people willing to self-immolate in the spotlight. The weak fall silently, and the stronger ones learn to smile when their hearts have turned to stone. They step in front of the camera, beautiful and perfect, but their eyes are empty. People call that the American dream. But if you listen long enough, you will realize amidst the cheering are gasping breaths, and between the lights are the tired eyes of those who have lost themselves in the pursuit of the light they once believed was eternal.